This time, Twig did not argue. Almost dead on his feet, he followed Sinew and Gristle to their hut. Inside, a woman was mixing something red in a bowl. She looked up. "Twig," she said as she wiped her hands on her apron. "I've been wanting to see you." She bustled her way towards him and enfolded him in her stubby arms. The top of her head pressed against Twig's chin. "Thank you, Pale One," she sobbed. "Thank you so much." She pulled herself away and dabbed at her eyes with the corner of her apron. "Take no notice," she sniffed. "I'm just a silly old woman." "Ma Tatum?" said Sinew. "Twig needs to sleep." "I can see that," she said. "I've already put some extra bedding in the hammock. But before that, there are one or two important things. She began rummaging furiously through a chest of drawers, and the air was soon filled with the things she was not looking for. "Ah, here we are," she exclaimed at last, and handed Twig a large furry waistcoat. "Try it on," she said. Twig slipped the waistcoat over his leather jacket. It fitted perfectly. "It's so warm," he said. "It's a Hamelhorn skin waistcoat," she told him, as she did up the toggles at the front. "Our specialty," she added, "and not for sale." She cleared her throat. "Twig," she said, "I would like you to accept it as a token of my gratitude for bringing Gristle back to me, safe and sound." Twig was overwhelmed. "Thank you," he said. "Stroke it," said Gristle. "What?" "Stroke it," he repeated, and giggled excitedly. Twig ran his palm down over the fleecy fur. It was soft and thick. "Very nice," he said. "Now the other way," Gristle persisted. Twig did as he was told. This time the fur bristled and stiffened. "Yow!" he cried, and Gristle and Sinew burst out laughing. Even Ma Tatum was smiling. "It's like needles," said Twig, sucking at his hand. "Dead or alive, you should never rub a Hamelhorn up the wrong way," Ma Tatum chuckled. "I'm glad you like my gift," she added. "May it serve you well." "It's very kind of you," Twig began, but Ma Tatum was not done yet. "And this will protect you from the unseen dangers," she said, and slipped a tooled leather charm around his neck. Twig smirked. Mothers, it seemed, were superstitious wherever they lived. "You would do well not to mock," said Ma Tum sharply. "I see from your eyes that you have not far to go. There is much out there that would do you harm. And though there is an antidote for every poison," she added, and smiled at Gristle, "once you fall into the clutches of the Gloamglazer, then you're done for." "The Gloamglazer?" said Twig. "I know about the Gloamglazer. The most evil creature of all," said Ma Tatum. Her voice cracked and low. "It lurks into the shadows. It stalks a slaughterer, sizing up its victim, all the while planning its death. Then, it pounces." Twig chewed nervously at the end of his scarf. It was the same Gloamglazer who was feared by wood trolls. That monstrous beast which lured wood trolls who strayed from the path to certain death. But that was just in stories, wasn't it? Even so, Ma Tatum continued talking. Twig shuddered. "The Gloamglazer consumes its victim while its heart is still beating," Ma Tatum whispered, her voice trailing away to nothing. "Right!" she announced loudly, and clapped her hands together. Twig, Sinew, and Gristle all jumped. "Ma!" Sinew complained. "Well," said Ma Tatum sternly, "you young people, always scoffing and mocking." "I didn't mean," Twig began, but Ma Tatum silenced him with a wave of her blood-red hand. "Never take the Deepwoods lightly," she warned him. "You won't last 5 minutes if you do." Then she leaned forward and seized his hand warmly. "Now, go and rest," she said. Twig didn't need telling twice. He followed Gristle and Sinew out of the hut and went with them across the village square to the communal hammocks. Strung between the trunks of a triangle of dead trees, the hammock swung gently to and from all the way up. Twig was, by now, so tired he could scarcely keep his eyes open. He followed Gristle up a ladder, which was lashed to the side of one of the trees. "This is ours," said the slaughterer, when they reached the uppermost hammock. "And there's your bedding." Twig nodded. "Thanks," he said. The quilt Ma Tatum had left for him was near the far end. Twig wobbled across the hammock on his hands and knees and wrapped it around him. The next moment, he was fast asleep. Twig was not disturbed by the rising sun, nor by the sound of the stone slab being dragged across the ground until the fire was directly beneath the hammocks. And when it was time for Gristle and Sinew and the others of the Tatum family to go to bed, Twig didn't notice a thing as they climbed into the massive hammock and settled down all around him. Twig slipped into a red dream. He was dancing with red people in a huge red hall. The food was red, the drink was red, even the sun streaming in through the fair windows was red. It was a happy dream, a warm dream, until the whispering began, that is. "Very cozy. Very nice," it hissed. "But this is not where you belong, is it?" In his dream, Twig looked round. A gaunt, cloaked figure was slinking off behind a pillar. As it did so, it scratched a long, sharp fingernail over the red surface. Twig stepped tentatively forwards. He stared at the scratch in the wood. It was weeping like an open wound. Suddenly, the whispering returned directly in his ear. "I'm still here," it said. "I'm always here." Twig spun around. He saw no one. "You silly little fool," came the voice again. "If you want to discover your destiny, you must follow me." Twig stared in horror as a bony hand with yellow talons emerged from the folds of the cloak, reached up and clasped the hood. It was about to reveal its face. Twig tried to turn away, but he couldn't move. All at once, the creature cackled with hideous laughter and let its hand drop down by its side. "You shall know me soon enough," it hissed, and leaned towards him conspiratorially. Twig's heart pounded furiously. He felt the warmth of the creature's breath against his ear and smelled a sulphurous mustiness, which seeped from its hooded cloak. "Wake up!" A sudden cry exploded inside Twig's head. He shouted in fear, opened his eyes, and looked around him in confusion. It was light, and he was high up, lying on something soft. Beside him were red-skinned individuals, all snoring softly. He looked at Gristle's face, calm in sleep, and everything came back to him. "Wakey, wakey up there!" he heard. Twig clambered to his knees and looked over the edge of the hammock. Far below him was a slaughterer, the only one still up. He was stoking the fire. "Was that you?" Twig called down. The slaughterer touched his forehead lightly and nodded. "Ma Tatum told me not to let you sleep through the day, Master Twig," he called back. "Not with your being a creature of the sun." Twig looked up at the sky. The sun was almost at its highest. He made his way to the end of the hammock, taking care not to wake any of the slumbering family, and climbed down the ladder. "That's it, Master Twig," said the slaughterer, and helped him down from the bottom rung. "You've a long journey in front of you." Twig frowned. "But I thought I might stay a while," he said. "I like it here, and I won't be missed by Cousin Snetterbark. At least not for the time being." "Stay here?" said the slaughterer in a sneering voice. "Stay here? Oh, you wouldn't fit in here at all. Why, Ma Tatum said only this daybreak what a gawky, ugly little fellow you are, with no feeling for leather." "Ma Tatum said that?" Twig swallowed the lump rising in his throat. "But she gave me this coat," he said, touching it lightly. The fur bristled and stood on end. "Ouch!" he yelped. "Oh, that," wheeled the slaughterer. "You don't want to take no notice of that. It's just an old coat. Can't give them away normally," he added, and laughed spitefully. "No, you want to go back to your own kind, and the path you want just lies over that way." The slaughterer pointed to the forest. As he did so, a flock of gray birds billowed noisily up into the sky. "I will," said Twig. His eyes were smarting, but he wouldn't cry, not in front of this little man with his red face and fiery hair. "And watch out for the glumglazer," the slaughterer called out, his voice nasal and mocking as Twig reached the trees. "I'll watch out for the glumglazer, all right," muttered Twig. "And for stuck-up slaughterers who treat you like a hero one minute and a bark slug the next." He turned to say as much, but the slaughterer was already gone. Twig was on his own once more. Well, that's it for this chapter. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you'd like to know what happens next, feel free to subscribe and stick around. See you later!